A long time ago, ships did not have motors. These ships were called sailing ships because they had large sails. They used the wind to move them from one place to another. When the wind blew, the sails helped the ship to move. Sailing ships could never travel in the opposite direction to the wind. Sailing ships had a captain and a crew of sailors. The captain was in charge of the ship. The captain was helped by the first mate and the second mate. They could take over running the ship when the captain was resting. The sails hung from large poles called yards. The yards were high up on a mast. Sailors put up the sails and took them down. The sailors climbed up narrow rope ladders called ratlins. They balanced on ropes, while they pulled the heavy sails in or let them out. Every rope on a sailing ship had a name and a place. The sailors had to learn the name of each rope and where it belonged. Sailors also had to know how to tie different types of knots. Before a sailor was able to climb the masts or to do other work, he had to learn the ropes. Sailors had to have good balance. They often worked while the ship was moving up and down in big waves. Waves would wash over the deck and make it slippery. Sailors had to be careful not to be washed overboard, because it was difficult for the ship to sail back to pick them up. Sailing ships had a carpenter and a sailmaker. The carpenter was able to repair the ship. The sailmaker could mend sails that got ripped in storms. When the weather was calm, the sailmaker and carpenter would spend their time keeping the sailing ship ship-shape. Sailors brought their own clothes and bedding when they boarded the ship. Sailors' beds were often made of hessian bags filled with straw. Sometimes in very rough seas, the sailors' beds would get wet, but the sailors would have to sleep in them anyway. Sailors ate salted pork or beef, and ship's biscuits. Ship's biscuits were very hard. Sailors dipped the biscuits in hot tea to soften them. Sailors worked for 4 hours and then had 4 hours off. This meant that they could only sleep for 4 hours at a time. If a ship was sailing in a storm, the sailors would have to work to keep the ship on course and safe. Then the sailors would have to do without sleep until the storm passed. Sailing ships would often take more than 100 days to travel to their destination. They had to carry enough food and fresh water to last for the whole voyage. Fresh water was only used for drinking and cooking. Salt water was used for scrubbing the deck, washing clothes and bathing. Buckets of salt water were kept on deck in case of fire. The end.